we work on story construction and crafting for a lot of companies, and in the financial services, one of the great parts of that speech can be built, your entire story can be built around, because he says, it is money they have, it is peace they lack. That's the cornerstone of a financial advisor. It's money they have, it's peace they lack. So what kind of help does every person need? You need three. You need a doctor that you can count on. You need a mechanic you can count on, because God knows you don't have any idea how your car works anymore. And you need a financial advisor. Those are three cornerstones, right? You need a doctor because if you sit down at dinner with a bunch of people and you go like this, you know, my right shoulder has been bothering me. Somebody at the table will do this. You know, it might be a micro tear in the small portion below your rotator cuff. What? I didn't know you were a doctor. Oh, I'm not, but I'm pretty sure it's a small tear in the rotator cuff just below the, what? It's like your car doesn't start. You walk up to the front of the car, you open the hood and you realize, well, the engine's in the back. And so you have to walk to the back of the car and open it. And then you look in at it, and it's this computerized model that has more computer power than Apollo 11 had, and that put Neil Armstrong on the moon in 1969. And you're looking at it like you would even know what to do, right? You would have no, what are you doing? It's the male genetic pull. The male is genetically pulled to the engine. Opens it, couldn't find a dipstick on the best day. And lastly, if you think you can do all your financial stuff on your own, you're insane. You're insane. This idea of invitation is important. So I'm going to give you the ideas broken down in pieces. And you know, I don't have my timer start, so I have no idea where I am within the context. So we're going to be here until your flight leaves. So idea one, transition to transformation. You guys use the word transition all the time. It's the wrong word. And words are important. Appointment versus invitation is important. Transition versus transformation is important. Here's a transition. You're at the stoplight and it goes from red to yellow to green. Green to yellow to red. That's a transition. It's a small thing. The moon in phases is a transition. The moon doesn't change, though early people freaked out, by the way, by the movement of the positioning of the Earth's shadow against the moon. The moon is still the moon. Still there, you can only see a little part of it. Right? So you need to be thinking of how the genius Darwin saw it. Darwin saw everything as transformative, as moving in this mass of transformation, of big ideas having big results. So I'm going to tell you the story of sawdust. I brought some sawdust with me. Many of you may be unfamiliar with this substance if you don't do any manual labor. This is like me. My wife always jokes, she says, Steve has two tools. One's a hammer, the other one isn't. And that sums up my mechanical aptitude. But I do know this is the waste result of a process, right? So let me show it to you. Early on in the lumber industry, you know, what they did with sawdust was they stacked it up. And it appeared to be a good idea at the time, right? Big stacks of it. But what happens is a chemical process occurs in small pieces of wood. There's a decomposition that releases gas and heat. So large stacks of sawdust used to do what? Blow up. Yeah, no one knew when, it would just blow up. At the same time the Great Fire of Chicago was going on, in Wisconsin, another fire was going on that killed over 200 people, a result of the combustion of a sawdust pile. So they couldn't figure out what to do. The first idea was move the sawdust farther away from people. That's a good idea. You would have thought of the same thing. You would have said, let's get it the hell away from the office, first of all. So you would move it in closer to the forest that you were cutting down, which then set your forest on fire. It was a bad move. Your second move was, and the lumber industry did this, bury it. Bury it, because if you put it underground, we don't have to worry about it. Well, they had no chemists on staff, obviously, because as you add a new element, pressure, the decomposition occurs faster, and you have landmines wherever you buried your sawdust. Blowing up, people walk to their car, not their cars and those, walk to their cars like this kind of. It was a horrific way to go home every night from work. Kind of exciting if you think about it, but not very safe. So as they were doing this, somebody came up with the idea, one of the guys, a guy named Peterson, by the way, comes up and he says, you know, I've been taking this stuff home at night. Why? Been playing around with some ideas. I've been playing around with some ideas. And you know that if we add an adhesive to it, we can actually create a wood product out of it. We can create a plywood-like substance out of it, and if we add it to another thing, we can make Duraflame logs out of it, and all of a sudden, the waste product is transformed, not transitioned, transformed into a profit center. A profit center. That's what transformation does. Transformation makes big things happen. So I thought I'd talk about transformation and use HBO as one of my examples. They could not have a better tagline. It's one of the greatest taglines of any single service in the world. It's not TV, it's HBO. So here's what happens. HBO starts, and here's their challenge. Fill airspace. How many of you are old enough to remember when TV stopped at midnight? And a test signal would come on. It was, and they would play, before the test signal came on, they'd play like the Star Spangled Banner, America the Beautiful, or they would play the Air Force poem High Flight. I'm an insomniac. I don't sleep at all and haven't since I was tiny. So I would, every night as a kid, I would be dreading midnight because everything went off the air. But I would hear High Flight every night, and it wormed its way into my head. I can do it line for line. Oh, I have slipped the surly bonds of earth to dance the sky on laughter's silvered wings. Line for line. So HBO's first challenge was 24 hours of programming to fill every day. It was a gigantic challenge. The risk had to lead to quality of subscribers. And they did the strangest thing because they were into immensities. 24 hours a day is immense. It's immense. They then had to fill it, and they decided to challenge Sunday nights. Now, this is an insane thing to do for a new startup like this because network television, in those days only the big three, NBC, CBS, and ABC, pre-Fox, dominated Sunday nights. Dominated it. They had to have new ideas to prevent churn because how does HBO make its money? Only on subscription and product placement. So they had to come up with ideas that stopped churning, and what did it for them was original programming. Not the rerun of movies, not sports, original programming. Around the time, early time, I don't know if any of you remember the Larry Sanders Show, kind of a comedy making fun of the Tonight Show. It went from there to Oz, this horrific prison show, but very popular on Sunday nights, to Sex and the City, and then it hit the tipping point. The transformational tipping point, The Sopranos. And from that moment, everything changes. All of television is transformed by this decision. Do you think there would be Breaking Bad, Justified, The Sons of Anarchy if it wasn't for The Sopranos? No. Those other networks had to compete at a completely new level to transform the way we watch television, to fill and stuff our DVRs that are stuffed with programming, that we binge watch. They did miniseries. Spielberg and Tom Hanks and Steven Spielberg's first miniseries, From Earth to the Moon. And then their epic miniseries, the one that won more awards than any other on HBO, Band of Brothers. If you haven't seen it, binge watch it. The best miniseries ever created. From there, it went to Game of Thrones. Game of Thrones, the current #1 show in HBO. For those of you that are Game of Thrones industry, who can tell me the 3-word tagline that will start appearing all over the internet for Game of Thrones? No Game of Thrones fans? Yes, who said it? Stand up, say it out loud. Winter is coming. All over Facebook, Twitter, all you will see are those 3 words. If you're not a Game of Thrones fan, you will have no idea what's going on. You will go, what? Is winter? I hope it's not coming. For God's sake, it's been the worst one ever. Winter is coming. You'll see that for Game of Thrones. My favorite was called John from Cincinnati. I'm a surfer. This was a surfing miniseries, 12 episodes, and they turned it off because I was the only one watching John from Cincinnati. And that's because they recognize what to do in transformational processes. You have to stop when something's bad and move to something else. That's what it means to transform, is motion. This HBO formula should be your formula. And I'll give it to you in a real quick one. You go with your gut, and you believe in the people that work with you to sustain quality. 2, you be original in your stories, in how you approach your client experience, which, by the way, is the only thing you have control over. You don't control the markets. You don't control Greece. You don't control healthcare. You don't control the government. You know what you control? Your client experience should be the focus and foundation of your strategy. 2, respect your audience. Respect those people that you do business with. Treat them with respect. And lastly, cultivate your talent. That's your talent. Your team's talent if you have a team. How much time do you spend every year getting better at your core skill sets, at your ability to do one-on-one, to think, to communicate in presentation skills, to tell stories? How good are you at what you do? You can be better, I guarantee you. Eric Clapton every day plays the pentatonic scale. For you musicians, the 12-note blues scale, a basic thing that every guitar player knows. He plays every day to get better. This is Dick Fosbury. So I'm going to tell you a quick Dick Fosbury story. We were part of the planning team at the Deer Valley Ski Resort near Park City, Utah. And as we're doing one of the greatest gigs in the history of gigs, because the ski runs weren't even cut yet, and we were skiing with the engineers, and we had paintball guns, and we were shooting the trees that were going to come down. Skiing in knee-deep powder, shooting trees with paintball guns. Best job ever, ever. So we're skiing down, and there's a surveying team, and we stop at this one guy. He's on his two-way, and he says, Fosbury, I need you to move over a little. And I turn to him, and I'm like 25 or 6 years old. I go, is that Dick Fosbury? And he goes, yeah. I go, the gold medalist from the 1968 Olympics? He goes, yeah. And I go, he's an engineer down there at the bottom of the slope? He goes, yeah. And I pointed my skis straight and went straight down the slope to go meet Dick Fosbury. And I go up to him. He doesn't even know who I am, right? I slide up to him. I don't even know what to say. I go, hey. And he looks at me and he goes, hey. Where do you keep your gold medal? Which was a stupid question. Opening stupid question. On my mantelpiece. And then I said to him, that's a good spot. How'd you do it? How'd I do what? How'd you create the Fosbury flop? How'd you figure out to go over backwards? And he said, well, I couldn't get over frontwards. I go, you're kidding me, that's it? That's it? This was a transformative moment in sport. 38 of the last world records have been set doing this. No one had ever seen it before when Fosbury did it the first time. It appeared crazy. In fact, in the Oregon Olympic trials, when he did it, they looked through the rule books to find out how illegal it was. That's what people in authority do with new ideas, right? They say, that can't be right. You can't do that. And they're looking up, get over the bar, get over the bar, get over the bar, get over the bar, get over the bar. You can do that. In Mexico City, when he went to do it at the Olympics, and he lined up, for those of you that remember in the old days, you used to go straddle the bar. So you would run straight at the bar, jump over, and kind of do the splits and get over the bar. But the Fosbury flop requires you to approach from an elliptical. So you have to stand over here to run in this curve to get over. And when he lined up to do it in Mexico City, the officials came over and said, you're in the wrong spot. And he goes, no, I'm not. I'm in the right spot. They go, not for the high jump, you aren't. The high jump lines up over there. And he goes, that's where they line up. I line up over here. Where do you have to line up? Where do you have to line up? Where do you have to line up? Okay, you can line up here, I guess. Boom, over the back he goes. The audience in Mexico City was stunned. Never seen anything like that before. Transformed the sport. Transformation is big. You should be thinking about your movement as being transformational.